Let's break down tariffs. A tariff is a tax on goods imported from other countries. If you buy a TV made in China, a tariff makes it more expensive in the US. The idea? Make foreign products less appealing, so people buy American-made goods instead. Tariffs have been used for centuries to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. For example, if a foreign car costs $20,000 and an American one costs $22,000, a 25% tariff on the foreign car raises its price to $25,000. Suddenly, the American car is the better deal. The government collects the tax, and American companies might sell more, potentially hiring more workers. This is called protectionism, shielding local industries from global competition. But there's a downside. Tariffs can mean higher prices and fewer choices for consumers. The debate over tariffs is as old as the country itself, with arguments about whether they help or hurt the economy. In early US history, tariffs funded the government. Later, they sparked political battles. By the late 20th century, most countries, including the US, moved toward free trade, lowering tariffs. The Trump administration's aggressive tariffs reversed that trend, putting tariffs back at the center of economic debate. President Trump made tariffs a signature of his America First agenda, launching a trade war, especially with China. He accused China of unfair practices, stealing intellectual property, forcing tech transfers, and flooding markets with cheap goods. Tariffs became his weapon to level the playing field for American workers. Instead of slow negotiations, Trump used executive authority to impose sweeping tariffs, citing national security laws like Section 232. This affected not just China, but allies like Canada and the EU, sparking controversy. Section 301 was another tool, targeting hundreds of billions in Chinese goods to pressure Beijing for economic reforms. The tariffs hit everything from industrial parts to everyday items like clothing and electronics. The administration argued the short-term pain, higher prices, supply chain disruptions, would be worth it for a stronger manufacturing sector. Critics called it a risky gamble, but Trump's approach marked the most aggressive use of tariffs in decades. The result: economic uncertainty and a fierce political fight over the future of US trade. The stage was set for a legal and economic showdown. Supporters of tariffs included struggling industries like steel and aluminum, and labor unions. They argued tariffs stopped unfair dumping of cheap subsidized metals and helped restart American factories. For many workers, tariffs meant jobs and community survival, not just economic theory. Supporters also saw tariffs as a matter of national security. Relying on rivals like China for critical materials was risky. The America First message resonated with voters who felt left behind by globalization. They believed free trade wasn't fair, pointing to China's state-driven economy as proof. Tariffs, they argued, were a blunt but necessary tool to force change and protect American jobs. Critics, however, saw things differently. They argued tariffs were a tax on Americans, raising prices for consumers and businesses. The debate became a battle over jobs, fairness, and the future of American industry. Opponents of tariffs included economists, business groups, and entire industries. Their main point: tariffs are a tax on Americans, not foreign countries. Costs get passed to consumers. Farmers were hit hard when China retaliated, slashing US agricultural exports and devastating rural communities. Billions in government aid couldn't replace lost markets. Industries relying on global supply chains, like automakers and tech companies, saw costs soar, making them less competitive. Critics argued modern manufacturing is global, and tariffs punished American efficiency. Free trade advocates warned tariffs alienated allies and undermined the global trading system. Instead of isolating China, they feared America was isolating itself. The result: disrupted supply chains, higher prices, and harm to the very workers tariffs aimed to protect. Many believed the tariffs failed to achieve their goals. The backlash was broad and intense. The stage was set for a legal reckoning. The Supreme Court case, American Importers Alliance versus United States, wasn't about whether tariffs were good policy. The question: did the president have the authority to impose sweeping tariffs without Congress? Plaintiffs argued the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs. They said laws like Section 232 were being stretched far beyond their intent, using national security as a pretext. The government countered that Congress had delegated this power for flexibility in trade threats. For years, courts deferred to the president on trade and national security, but in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the Trump-era tariffs exceeded presidential authority. The ruling declared broad, unilateral tariffs unconstitutional, shaking the foundations of U.S. trade policy. The majority opinion revived the non-delegation doctrine. Congress can't hand off core legislative powers. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that taxing and regulating foreign commerce is Congress's job. Laws like Section 232, when used to impose sweeping tariffs, were an unconstitutional transfer of power. The court said presidents need flexibility for specific threats, but not to overhaul trade policy alone. The national security rationale was applied too broadly, giving the president a blank check. The court insisted any extraordinary executive power must be clearly justified and tied to Congress's intent. The dissent warned this would limit presidential flexibility in crises, but the majority held firm. The decision reasserted Congress's primary role in trade. For consumers, the ruling means lower prices. Tariffs on thousands of goods are now invalid. Importers save money, and those savings are expected to reach shoppers. Businesses relying on imported materials can now compete more effectively. But industries once protected by tariffs, like steel, face renewed foreign competition and possible job losses. The decision brings stability. Companies can plan without fear of sudden tariff changes. Trade groups have long demanded this predictability. For workers, the impact is mixed. Some may lose jobs in protected sectors, while others benefit from cheaper materials and more competitive industries. The ruling highlights the trade-off. Protecting one industry often hurts another. The economic landscape is shifting. Main Street will feel the effects for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision redraws the map for U.S. trade policy. The president can no longer set broad tariffs alone. Congress is back in charge. Any future tariffs will require debate and approval in the House and Senate. Expect a scramble in Washington. The White House must unwind tariffs, and Congress may try to pass new, more targeted trade laws. Allies see this as a win for stable, rules-based trade. Rivals like China will face a more predictable U.S. approach. The U.S. will rely more on diplomacy and international coalitions, less on unilateral action. The ruling forces a national rethink of how America engages with the world economy. The Trump-era tariff strategy is over, at least as a tool of executive power. The debate over protectionism versus free trade now returns to Congress, where the Constitution intended. The future of U.S. trade will be shaped by lawmakers, not just the president. A new era of American trade policy begins.